you're not going anywhere. You've got pleurisy and a collapsed lung, and the lung that is working is only working at 30%. So this is the second time I got poisoned. So because I was having so much trouble breathing, my wife at the time carted me off to hospital. Into emergency, they checked me out. Oh no, can't breathe. Some x-rays, and turns out I've got pleurisy. Now I didn't even know what pleurisy was at this point. So pleurisy is a infection generally, or a irritation of the sac that contains your lungs. So the membrane around your lungs gets inflamed, and it reduces its ability to expand and contract with your lungs. So effectively, your lungs are trying to expand with oxygen, and they're unable to expand because the membrane around is becoming more rigid and not allowing that expansion. So the end result was one of my lungs had collapsed and the other lung was working at around 30% capacity. So the doctor started me on antibiotics and said, right, we'll have you in overnight and we'll get into this tomorrow. And I said, no can do. He says, why? I said, because I'm about to jump in a truck and drive to Sydney. And he said, no, you're not. And I said, yes, I am. And the end result was I had to sign a form which basically said that I'd refused treatment and that I was an absolute moron, as it turned out. And he washed his hands of it and I walked out of the hospital. It wasn't until I got to about Mittagong, I was coming from Melbourne, it wasn't until I got about to Mittagong that it actually dawned on me what he'd said. I have a collapsed lung and one lung is working at 30% capacity. And I suddenly realised I could actually die here. This is stupid. Anyway, freight's got to get through, job's got to get done. Don't do that. Think about it. Nothing is worth your life. No load is worth your life. No job is worth your life. I've learned this since. At the time, I stupidly carried on. So what caused all this? So this was the first week working for a new company, and in the last days of the previous week, where I had finished my previous job, I had been exposed to aluminium phosphide, otherwise known as phostoxin and various other names. It's a insecticide. I used to cart grain, do a lot of fertiliser and things like that, but it was carting grain at this stage. And I went from that to interstate general transport. So in the last couple of days of working carting grain, I was loading grain off a farm up near Horsham, and we'd almost loaded. I'd loaded the A trailer. We were just finishing off the back of the B trailer out of silos with an auger, and suddenly the auger seized up. So, and warning here, a couple of OH&S breaches coming up. Don't come at me, this was nearly 15 years ago now. So I climb up on the back of the trailer, and mind you, this trailer was 7-foot sides, so my feet are probably about 4.1 metres off the ground. So I'm standing with 1 foot on the pelmet over the tailgate and 1 foot on the side of the trailer, and wrestling with the auger as the farmer puts it forward, back, trying to dislodge whatever's clogging up the auger from running. So it's backwards and forwards, and all of a sudden there's this boof, and this cloud of grey-white dust comes out the end of the auger, straight in my face, absolutely covered me. Yeah, that's great. What the hell was that? And then out comes the remains. And so I'm pulling the remains out of this auger, and it's, yeah, what is it? What's coming out of the auger? It's an aluminium phosphide blanket. Now what they do is they hang these blankets up in the top of silos, and it fumigates the silo. They're supposed to be removed, there's supposed to be a withholding period. Yeah, it didn't happen. Obviously the farmer forgot about it or just failed to do it. So it's fallen down into the silo with the grain. It's gone down through the silo, up through the auger, into the truck, and seized up the auger. I've copped it all in the face. Fantastic. Now, I'll give you a bit of info on aluminium phosphide. In North Africa, it's the poison of choice if you want to yourself. It's very, very common. It's also an extremely common cause of death in the agricultural industry. So aluminium phosphide, what does it do? So aluminium phosphide in reaction to air causes phosphine gas. Phosphine gas obviously is a very effective pesticide to get rid of things like weevils and the like. It's extremely toxic. So what happens when you get poisoned by phosphine? The immediate response is you normally get a gastrointestinal effect, so nausea, vomiting, epigastrological issues. Then we move on to the next step. It attacks the respiratory system and it attacks the heart. So when it attacks the heart, what it does is it causes hypertension, which is high blood pressure, and bradycardia, which is a slowing down of the heartbeat. And in its worst case, and obviously fatal result, is it slows the heart down to such a degree that the heart either stops pumping or it stops pumping enough blood, therefore oxygen around the body, starves all of the organs, including the brain, of oxygen, and it's good night. The other way it attacks you is the respiratory system. Now, what it does is it causes the lungs to basically fill up with fluid. So it causes the little air sacs in your lungs start to fill up with fluid. And in some cases, which is what happened to me, it also starts affecting around the outside of the lungs. It's called pleural effusion, the liquid around the lungs. And in some cases, that then causes pleurisy. Now, pleurisy, obviously, as I said, is a irritation or sometimes infection, depending on how it's caused, of the membrane around your lungs that stops your lungs from actually filling to capacity, and, like in my case, collapses a lung and has reduced operation of the other lung. So once again, extremely lucky. I don't know how I get away with these things. That was the second one.